What's happening, everybody? Welcome back to World of Warships with Tuffy the Great. So, after a pretty hefty grind with the Gneisenau and some of my premium ships, we have finally unlocked the legendary true-to-life battleship Bismarck. As a ship collector in the game with the Bismarck's sister ship, the Tirpitz, and the Prince Eugen, and the Scharnhorst, and the Arizona, ships that I pay real money for in the premium shop, just mostly because I really like having those historical ships. I've been really excited to unlock this ship because it is such a legendary battleship. Her time on the water was short-lived. She didn't see a whole lot of real action, but you know, it was still a famous ship for what it was. If the British went after it, they knew that if the Bismarck entered into the Atlantic Ocean and did what it was supposed to do, which was convoy raidings, that it would have severely disrupted the British war effort, and it would have really cut in half the British supply lines. If it had had the Tirpitz and the Bismarck running around combined with the Wolf Pack, then that could have caused some real problems for the British Navy, and they're not the British Navy, but the British supply lines, keeping England supplied during the war, especially pre-U.S. entrance. So the thing about the Bismarck is it is nothing like its sister ship, the Tirpitz. The Tirpitz actually has a higher top speed right out of the gate. I got a little used to the quick gun traversal of the Tirpitz, as well as how maneuverable it was. It has a very quick rudder shift time, both it and the Gneisenau do. So I've been playing a lot with those, and I kind of got used to that, and playing in the Bismarck kind of threw me for a loop with how slow everything moves on it, but I also don't have it fully upgraded yet. So let's take a look at the Bismarck. Of course, the Bismarck was named for the Otto von Bismarck, who was the German prime minister, I guess you could say. Before World War I, he kind of set in place a very uneasy alliance with the rest of Europe, and he had things kind of set in place that only he could really control. So when they ousted Otto von Bismarck from his position of authority, everything in the European Union kind of fell apart, and that's ultimately what plunged us. It led to the outbreak of World War I. The Bismarck was laid down on the 1st of July in 1936, and it was actually launched over 3 years later on the 14th of February 1939. She was commissioned in the Kriegsmarine as the Bismarck on the 24th of August in 1940, and of course her very, very short-lived career was she was scuttled after being basically incapacitated by the Royal Navy on the 27th of May in 1941. She is a Bismarck class battleship, and she did carry 103 officers and 1,900 crewmen. The Bismarck is most famous for, once she left the northern fjords, she was actually spotted by British reconnaissance flights, and they knew she was headed into the North Atlantic, and they knew that they had to stop her. The fleet admiral that was actually on board the ship decided to only give her about half a tank of gas, so to speak. She only had about a quarter to a half of the tank of the fuel capacity that she was capable of carrying. Of course, she was one of two, her sister ship, the Tirpitz. Of course, one of my favorite ships of all time in this game. Oh. So, she was supposed to be the primary force behind the German naval line. The Kriegsmarine, these battleships were fast, they were maneuverable. They didn't have as big guns as, say, the U.S. battleships did, but they did have the range, and they were basically designed as like cruiser killers. They were designed as commerce raiders. They were supposed to sever the supply line that the U.S. and England had at that time. And when she was spotted, the British knew that she was out there, and it terrified the British to the point where they sent the HMS Hood and the HMS Prince of Wales after the Bismarck to try to sink her. Now, famously, the Bismarck ended up crippling the Prince of Wales to the point where it was forced to retreat, but it did sink the HMS Hood. The HMS Hood was a legendary battleship, or a battle cruiser in the British Navy, and it was the pride of the British Navy. And when the Hood was sank and word reached England that the Hood had been sank, it devastated the people of England. It was like, if somebody came in and scuttled the USS Constitution or sank the Enterprise, it really hit them hard because it was the pride of England. At that point, it rallied the British behind sinking the Bismarck, and British Prime Minister Winston Churchill, of course, famously told the British to get out there and sink the Bismarck. Those famous lines. So the relentless pursuit of dozens of British ships. Of course, this is going to be kind of an abridged version. The Battle of the Denmark Strait, as it was known, was actually a very, very intense cat and mouse game. And if it's something that interests you, because it is a very fascinating unfolding in naval history, I do recommend that you go look it up, or even grab the old movie Sink the Bismarck and watch it. That's a pretty good retelling. But ultimately, what happened after days of pursuit, the Bismarck had decided to turn and go back to Nazi-occupied France, and the relative safety of Nazi aircraft cover, so that the British could no longer pursue it. But the HMS Ark Royal was an aircraft carrier that was involved in the pursuit, and it was sending up very, very old Swordfish biplane torpedo bombers. The reason why the biplanes were actually so effective is that the Bismarck's anti-aircraft armament was so effective against faster moving airplanes that they couldn't target the slow moving torpedo bombers. So after several torpedo runs, the Bismarck was ultimately hit in the very rear of the ship, which jammed her her steering gears, and she was turning to avoid the torpedoes, so that put her into like a very shallow 30-degree turn that she couldn't get out of, which allowed the British fleet that she was ultimately outrunning to catch up with her. A gigantic, heavy battle followed. The fleet admiral that was on the bridge of the Bismarck was actually frozen with inaction and allowed the Bismarck to be hit several times before the captain of the ship took over and basically gave the order to open fire. Ultimately, the Bismarck was so heavily damaged that the crew decided to scuttle her rather than let her fall into British hands. Once she was incapacitated, all of her guns had been taken out, her motor had been taken out, she was dead in the water, she was listing, so they scuttled her. They set off charges deep in the ship's hull, and ultimately the Bismarck turned over onto her back and sank. She was discovered in June of 1989 by Robert Ballard on the floor of the Atlantic Ocean. She actually landed and then slid for about a mile in the murky depths. All of her 4 turrets are gone. Most of her superstructure was gone. The 4 turrets, when the ship capsized and flipped over, the 4 turrets just fell out. They did find a couple of them. I think they found 2 of them. These turrets are not held in there by anything. They're held in by their own weight. So when the Bismarck flipped over, they just fell out of their turret ports. So that's the Bismarck and a brief history. Like I said, it is a very, very fascinating story, the Battle of the Denmark Straits with the Bismarck. I do recommend you go check it out. Go check out the old movie, Sink the Bismarck. It's a great, great movie, and it gives you kind of an idea from both the German and British point of view of the Battle of the Denmark Straits. So what does the Bismarck look like here in World of Warships? Well, she has 64,500 hit points, so she can take quite a bit of damage. She has 32 to 315 millimeters of armor. Let's take a look at her armor real quick. Of course, her armor is heaviest here at the main battery barbettes. You're looking at 340 millimeters of armor. 360 in the mount armor, as well as about 150 in each one of the turrets themselves. She's got some heavy armor here at the bottom armor belt where the torpedoes hit. The United States, the way that they did it is they created a pocket inside the ship that the torpedoes would detonate against, along with several bulkheads throughout here. So as the torpedo detonated, one bulkhead would fill up with water, and the rest of the ship would stay afloat. Where the Germans, they just threw heavy armor down. She actually can take quite a few hits from torpedoes. And of course the superstructure has 19 millimeters of armor. I mean, it's pathetically weak. Here in the front end, you're 32, same thing down here in the aft end. But where it really, really comes down to count here is here in the armor belt on the main sides, as well as the conning tower. And then you've got the second rear conning tower here. This is an alternate conning tower in case this one gets taken out. So that's the ship's armor. 24% torpedo protection, which is pretty on par for a ship at this level. Her artillery, of course, we've got 4 2-barreled, 4-turreted 380 millimeter turrets here, as well as her secondary armament is 8 of these 2-barreled 105 millimeter artillery cannons, as well as 6 of these 2-barreled 150 millimeter artillery cannons. So this thing can hit pretty hard. Actually, if you deck this ship out for a secondary armament, if you deck it out for a secondary armament outfitting, you can actually do a lot of damage to destroyers and cruisers because your fire is accurate and you have a higher chance of setting fires on the ships. The AA defense that's on the Bismarck is pretty good, Not anything to be proud of. I think the North Carolina, the Tier 8 American pocket battleship, does a better job. The North Carolina and the Iowa can actually lay down heavy anti-aircraft fire and sink, shoot down whole fleets of aircraft by themselves. So we have 12 of these one-barreled 20 millimeter flak cannons, as well as 2 of these 4-barreled 20 millimeter flak-fillings, which is another set of flak cannons, and 8 of these 2-barreled 37 millimeter flak cannons. And of course, the secondary 105 millimeter armament can be loaded for anti-aircraft fire. Right now, the Bismarck is not upgraded. I haven't installed any upgrades on her at all. Her max speed is only 28.5 knots. She has a turning circle of 850 meters, which is actually pretty small. It's a lot smaller than, say the Iowa or the North Carolina at this level. But her rudder shift time is at 17.9 seconds, so it does take a minute to get that rudder from one end to the other. Now, on her concealment, her detectability range by sea is about 16.5 kilometers, and by air it's about 14.5, but we can fire that main battery at 19.3 kilometers. So without being spotted by, say, a destroyer or an aircraft, we can actually fire out long before they can see us. So that's kind of a good thing. So that is the beautiful, legendary battleship Bismarck here on paper. But what's she look like once she gets into a fight? Well, I've had a couple of really good battles, and so let's go ahead and take a look at those. So here we are in our battleship Bismarck. Kind of hanging out. Looks like we got a Bismarck next to us, a Gneisenau, German battleship line.
Battle starts.
Let's see what happens here. We're going to wait and see. Okay, so they want to go CB. Well, now we're going AB. Let's throw our hat in the ring there. So it has been a while since I have been able to get a game going with this. It's been one or the other. If I'm not recording, then I have a couple of really great games, and as soon as I turn on the recorder, everything just goes to hell in a handbasket. So let's hope that we can kind of change that luck, if you will. Just haven't been having any good games, and truth be told, I haven't been playing hard enough to have any good games. But let's see what we can do today. And of course, that there is the Tier 7 German battleship, the Gneisenau, as well as a Tier 7 premium U.S. cruiser, the USS
Enemy force sighted on the horizon.
He said to reverse it. I think there's too many bad guys for him. Let's see what this Gneisenau is going to do. Is he going to turn? Let's go. Let's start seeing him shoot at something here. Slow down and let this Gneisenau poke in front of him. I'm not entirely sure what he's doing. Mountain is fast right in front of us, but maybe we can get a shot at this destroyer. So we're going to scoot over to A, I think. Our armament. Let's get those guns spun around. There is a turret that's headed right for A.
Position.
Looks like they split up their team pretty good. Of course, we are detected, but we're not being shot at yet.
report. Enemy cruiser detected.
We got to get in there and start capping. Doing good as far as killing ship's concerned, but we're just going to keep losing points as long as we don't cap anything.
Fighter airborne.
Now the destroyer was a good teammate. He laid down smokescreen for a ship that and that Megado did not stay in the smokescreen. That the destroyer very graciously laid down for him. Which is kind of surprising. That's how you get a good teammate with a destroyer. Laying down smokescreens, got a ship that's being targeted. Battleships, even though people make fun of them, they are essential to the game operation itself. And the fact that that destroyer was kind enough to lay down a smokescreen for his teammate that was in trouble was actually quite awesome. Carrier, I think we're leading him too far. It's not too bad. Go this way, see if maybe we can catch all these enemy ships in between us and that little Bismarck. Difference between the Bismarck and her sister ship, the Turbulence, is that Bismarck does not have torpedoes.
Torpedoes to port.
Like fun. Okay.
Enemy battleship sunk.
Goodbye, Nagato. Kill this. I don't know, did I kill the New Mexico or did I kill the carrier? Which one do I kill? Let's kill that carrier. Right now he's under imminent threat to my battleship. Oh, it's gonna be good. A couple of over-penetrations for 3,000 damage, but we do. shaping up to be a pretty darn good game. So I'm happy about that. And of course, we all know how much I love the pneumatic tanks. This hurts me more than it hurts him.
Enemy battleship foundered.
So again, we're ahead with ships, but it doesn't really matter because we are losing on points. If they continue to hold 2 cap circles, then they are going to win the battle automatically by points. And another one of their ships has gone down, so that moves up just a little bit. Looks like that Nagato's in there, Captain B. Yay him. Way to be a team player. As long as we can hold 2 of the 3 cap points, we should be okay. That poor Bismark driver, he is completely outgunned, and now he has 3/4 of the enemy team coming for him. We're probably not going to get to him to put any shots on, but 80,000 damage, almost 81,000 damage. I'm not too upset about that. That was a good game. I'm glad that I'm finally able to get a Bismarck game out. I've been trying to do this for some time. Bismarck, 15 kilometers away, shots out. Didn't lead him enough. Yeah. Didn't lead him enough, that was too far ahead. Look at the amount of fire coming out of this Bismarck. He is really toast, and that's it. Bismarck down. Snip, snip. Hate to see a fellow Bismarck go down like that. So, it was okay for a victory. 80,986 damage, almost 81,000 damage. 32 target hits, 6 fighters were shot down. We did take down 2 ships, set 1 ship on fire with our secondary batteries. 1 hit to Citadel. You remember we took down that Nagato with a Citadel hit. Assisted in the capture of C, and out of our secondaries we fired 6 shots. So out of 6 shots we set 1 fire. I'll take that kind of stat any day. So that is it for the German Tier 8 battleship Bismarck. It is safe to say that I do love this ship. I have a lot of fun playing it. At long range it's pretty useless, but as soon as you can start getting closer and closer, probably within 15 to 10 kilometers, the guns start to become deadly. But I do love it. I love the fact that it's a big historical ship, and so hopefully the next video that we do is I inch closer to the Tier 9 German battleship Friedrich the Gross, which stands for Frederick the Great in German. So that's it for today, you guys. As always, go ahead and leave a comment down in that comment section. Tell me how I did. Tell me how I can improve the channel, because that's the only way that I'm going to improve my channel is by doing what you guys ask. Go ahead and hit that like button on this video. Give it a thumbs up. Give it a thumbs down. Tell me what you thought. And as always, show the channel some love. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And as always, you guys, I'll talk to everybody later.